Hello, everyone. I have this wonderful collab with Chayce from Chayce Book Thoughts, and we are here to talk about some Dresden. And this video is going to contain nuclear spoilers for the entire Dresden Files. So if you have not read the series, go read the series and then come back and you can watch this. Chayce, you can introduce yourself to anyone here who doesn't know you.
All right, so I'm pretty sure that all of you know me, but if not, I'm Chayce from Chayce's Book Thoughts, and I'm a channel where I upload very inconsistently, and if that appeals to you, and I have yet to make any Dresden content, but this is my first step into that larger world, so I'm here to talk some Dresden with the resident Dresden expert.
Yep, that's me. And he has a much nicer background than me that it looks like he put a lot more effort into than me for this video. So
Yeah.
you can trust the quality of his content to reflect that excellent background.
Thanks.
So Dresden, I think we should start with just kind of overall thoughts on the series.
At the very beginning, I wasn't sure that I liked Harry Dresden very much. I understood the appeal, and I've always liked those kind of loner detective stories, and kind of like if you've ever heard of Raymond Chandler, he wrote kind of noir fiction back in like the 30s and 40s, and that was probably his most famous book is called The Big Sleep. And I've always really been interested in that kind of fiction. And so I kind of came into this series with that expectation, but also that there was going to be a lot of expansion pretty early on, and that it was going to be like a really huge world. And so over the course of the series, I feel like there's a very natural progression of like the kind of creatures that are in it and how bigger and bigger enemies are developed over the course of the series. I mean, obviously you start off with what like Victor Sells, and then you get all the way to,
F you, yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, even Mab seems kind of small by the end of it. And, it's kind of crazy to me like how well Jim Butcher has developed the villains in particular. I think that that's something that's not talked about enough. But early on, I did like the setup and the concept more than I liked the actual characters. It took me probably Summer Night to actually be really invested in any of the particular characters, specifically Murphy. Like Summer Night Murphy is like,
Yes, we have
great.
Summer Night Gang.
Yeah.
There's been, I feel like, an uptick recently of people who don't like Summer Night, but I love Summer Night.
I really enjoyed Summer Night. Like when I first read it, I was like, oh, this is like Dresden Files Endgame. But little did I know, like,
yeah, Dresden Files Endgame has gone up quite a bit. And I remember when you were reading Changes, you were like, this is like Dresden Files Endgame when like the portal opened at Chichen Itza. And I'm like, nope, that comes later, because obviously
my sweet summer child.
Dresden Files Endgame. There is, I mean, I can't imagine how crazy the bat is going to be. For those who don't know, the 22 case files are going to be capped off by a big apocalyptic trilogy, which just sounds like fun.
Yeah, I don't know how he's gonna do it, but I also didn't expect Battleground to ever happen. So
yeah, it's like,
so honestly, like my expectations are kind of, I'm trying to temper my expectations so that I'm not like expecting too much, but I know that Butcher is definitely gonna deliver on some really big things.
yeah, because Harry keeps getting more powerful, and Butcher's only going to make Harry's life worse, so he can't become more powerful relative to his problems, right? Like, that
Yeah.
would be horrible.
And obviously we can't like see super far into the future, and we don't have too much to go on for like what's going to happen in Bat, obviously, other than like the kind of summaries that we have, like the vague summaries. But I feel like there's going to be some more major character deaths that, will like break our hearts even more than.
Oh, I'm sure Jim is very, very much planning to hurt us in for basically all the remaining books.
I there's a few characters I feel like are probably going to die, but I don't want to like speak it into existence. I just want to have it in the back of my mind and feel like it's not going to happen, even though it probably will.
Yeah, I mean, so I was going to get into this later, but for tinfoil hat theories, which is actually, funnily enough, the last video I recorded that I need to upload was Dresden tinfoil hat theories. Um, I am personally in the camp that does not think Harry lives through the end. I have a very tinfoil hat meta theory that is basically, we know these are technically like Harry's journals. I don't know if you remember in Turncoat, but Ebenezer had like a bunch of journals going all the way back to the original Merlin. And he said, like, I'm going to pass the collection to you one time. And someone once asked Jim, like, oh, are we ever going to see Harry's journals? And Jim was like, what do you think you guys have been reading? And people have pointed out, like, if this is first person retrospective, it doesn't really read like first person retrospective. Every once in a while, there will be a hint of first person retrospective. There was a lot, especially in changes in Battleground, where narrator Harry will come in and like give a little hint, but it doesn't really read like first person retrospective. But there is one other part of Dresden where Harry is recounting a story that reads in the exact same style as the rest of the series, and it is story time with Leia in Ghost Story when Harry is a ghost, because ghosts have perfect memory. So
Right.
my theory is that this is basically Harry's ghost narrating his story to someone else who's writing it down, which is why it mostly reads like first person past with perfect memory with a splash of first person retrospective.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I mean, obviously it's easy to look at the series and say like, oh, this is just kind of like a B level, urban fantasy series. Of course, he knows everything and is writing down everything. But at the same time, like that's a very good explanation for it. And I feel like it's like it would be really like Sixth Sense of Jim Butcher to like do that.
It feels exactly like the type of thing he'd do, where like he plays off our expectations to not overthink it, and then is kind of like, yeah, you should have overthought it. Like, I gave you all these hints and you just pretended they didn't exist. Like, what do you want me to do?
I mean, the whole like perfect memory thing in Ghost Story was really big because, there's so much that's happened over the course of like the last, I don't know, 15, 20 years that it's pretty much almost been. I don't know the exact timeline, but I know it's got to be like in that range. But it's just, it would be a really, I don't know, clever. Like, I feel like it would be kind of clever to, like you said, play off our expectations and pull that kind of twist on us. And I feel like it wouldn't take away from the story or the time that we had with Dresden. And it would kind of be like a Name of the Wind thing where he's like recounting his story to the chronicler.
And it not taking away, that's really my biggest bar for theories. And it's why I'm not a huge theory person, because a lot of the time I'll see theories and like they're logically supported, but I'm like, that just doesn't sound very interesting though. Like that doesn't sound like a satisfying story. Even if you have all this in-text support, I don't think Jim is going to write a bad story to trick us. Like he's not going to do that. And like, Harry becoming a ghost and they're narrating his story could be both satisfying and hurt us deeply, which makes it really like, make me think it's more likely because that's kind of what Jim does. And actually, I only came up with this on my last reread when I was reading Ghost Story and I was at Storytime with Leia and I was like, holy crap, like this is exactly like Leia is listening to an audiobook by James Marsters right now. Like,
and I feel like, yeah, like I'm not a big theory person either, so I don't have too much to contribute to this conversation other than like my thoughts on your theories. But I think that theories can be a little dangerous because they kind of have us set our own, like if we like the theory enough, if it seems valid enough to us, then we kind of like have the tendency to set that expectation for the future. And when that doesn't happen, we get really disappointed. And though it's no fault of the writer, we get upset and kind of like demean the story and like kind of act like it's worse because it what we wanted didn't happen. Um,
Yeah, I totally
and
agree.
yeah, and that kind of happened to me recently with Fall of Babel. Like there were, I'm like not gonna get too sidetracked, but there were a ton of like really crazy theories because the books just like get really crazy over time, like Dresden does. And I saw a lot of theories online, and almost like none of those happened. But at the same time, we still got a great ending, and so I'm not going to complain about it.
Look at this guy just flexing. Like, yeah, I've read Fall of Babel, by the way.
Oh, I got it right here.
Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah, no, but like I think that, it's okay to have like theories. And I think that with Dresden, coming toward the end of the series, there are a lot more theories than I expected, and that I gave credit for. Um, and so reading those theories has been really interesting.
Yeah, and
Uh,
there's actually also with there's the danger of just looking for supporting evidence as you
mhm,
read, which this almost happened to me. I used to have a theory which is just expressly like denied in the text, like it's wrong,
mhm.
and it was for who Cowell is. And I saw a theory once. This one I didn't come up with; someone else came up with, which is probably why I was wrong.
Yeah.
And it was that Cowell isn't a person; Cowell is a title, similar to Merlin or Blackstaff.
Mm,
And it's like Cowell, the original like Cowell that we saw in Deadbeat,
mhm.
died in Deadbeat. And then the Cowell we see later is another Cowell who's kind of like the Cowell post Deadbeat. Seems like he really like dislikes Harry quite a bit more and
Yeah.
is a lot more malicious, which I mean can easily be explained by the fact that he's rather upset that Harry, you know, hit him with a hammer as he was performing a ritual to ascend to godhood. But uh it also could be different people. But then in White Knight, Harry recognizes Cowell by his magic, and he's like, "Yeah, that's the same Cowell." And I'm like, "Oh, never mind. It's the same guy. He's survived Deadbeat. My theory's wrong." Um.
Um,
Anyway,
yeah, no, as far as theories go, I mean, mine are pretty vague and they're more so just general concerns that like Molly is gonna die.
yeah,
That
yeah.
that
I
one
don't.
I'm really worried about that one. I feel like it's just my anxiety because I like Molly so much now. Like
Yeah,
I've
I
I've
don't know
always
if she's either
like
die or like ends with her becoming Mab. I don't think she's getting a happy ending. Sorry,
yeah,
folks.
I mean she's already suffered like so much, especially becoming the Winter Lady and how that happened. Like it just came out of nowhere too. And I mean, it's like Murphy's fault. Obviously, it's like you don't want to look at it and blame Murphy and make it a negative thing against Murphy. But at the same time, it's Murphy's fault. And I just I feel bad for Molly, like so bad for Molly, especially in the short story that she had with Ramirez. I can't remember the
Cold case.
yes,
Yeah,
Cold Case. And that was pain. Like I read that,
yeah,
I was like,
yeah. I remember reading that when it came out, and it was pretty painful, and everyone was like pretty shocked by that one.
because I read the short stories like along as I was reading the novels. Because I read the first like 3 or 4 books, and then I found a reading order like last year when I started reading it. And so I caught up to the short stories, and then like ever since then I would read them like in between each book or whatever. And I feel like to some degree that has helped my reading experience, but in other ways it's been like kind of not, it didn't really add too much. I mean, there are like probably some stories like I can count on one hand that have really like added to my Dresden
Yeah,
experience.
they're kind of
But
hit and miss.
yeah,
Um,
I think I think the briefcases like consistently has better stories, but some of the highs inside jobs are like really great. Like I think the Aftermath was really good. Um, but and one story I thought was cool, even though it doesn't really have any bearing on the story, is the prequel Lucio story when she's like fighting the necromancer.
Yeah, she fights
like back in like the
she fights
1800s.
Gravane and Kemmler.
Yeah.
Meets Wyatt Earp, isn't quite as good at shooting as Wyatt Earp, but has magic, so she's got that going for her, and has an angry magical horse.
Like I thought that was a cool story. Like it doesn't really
Yeah,
add too much, but it adds like enough to her character, or at least her history, that I think that it was interesting.
Yeah.
And I can kind of, but like there are some stories, like probably half the stories inside jobs I don't even remember at this point, just because
some of them are pretty forgettable. Like Hero what happens in Hero what?
Yeah, like
Who knows?
I only remember the name. Like I don't remember anything about what happened. But
one thing I like about the Lucio one, which I think is called Fistful of Warlocks, is that like Ebenezer is already like really old.
Mm-hmm.
Like we're going back to 1800s, and Lucio's still like Ebenezer, who's like this really old guy who's like the captain of the Wardens. And I'm like, okay, Ebenezer, yeah, you've been doing stuff for quite a while.
And Ebenezer, that brings up an interesting point, is like, how do you feel about Ebenezer in the last, like in general, but specifically the last two books?
So I think Ebenezer, more tinfoil hat theories. This is also one of my tinfoil hat theories. So if you know, book 22 is the last case file book, and it's the time travel book. And I, in my last reread of Peace Talks, have fully convinced myself that Ebenezer is going on a wee little corruption arc and is going to be the antagonist of that book. And I've then even really put on more craziness and say there are two Ebenezers in Peace Talks. There's book 22 Ebenezer and book 16 Ebenezer. And that's why, like, Ebenezer goes from, in one scene, he's like super antagonistic towards Harry. And then in the next scene, he's kind of like normal. Anyways.
So that's the real book.
Yes. My video that I've recorded, I recorded the last one a day ago, starts at not tinfoil, and it goes like progressively more and more tinfoil hat. That is maximum like conspiracy theory. It's all connected.
You should have made a tinfoil hat and worn it.
I did for the video. Yeah. I literally wear a tinfoil hat, and I add more tinfoil to it for each theory.
Where's the tinfoil hat? You need to wear it when you're talking about this.
No, I think it's not. I don't know where it went. Sorry.
That's a shame. But like, Ebenezer, I always thought he was so cool. And even in like Turncoat, when he was just kind of like not really on Harry's side, it felt like. But in Peace Talks, I was just like, every time I read an Ebenezer scene, I was like, I know why he's upset, but I don't care. Like
Ebenezer,
I want Ebenezer back.
I think Ebenezer is probably the single character Harry may have the most biased perspective on. Yeah. Like even in Changes, when Ebenezer shows up after learning that he would die if the thing goes off, Harry's like, he probably didn't even consider that. I'm like, oh yes, he did. Like, come on, he's not.
You think he's that stupid, Harry?
Like, yes, he considered. He's like, oh shit, I'm gonna die. Like, all right, everyone, let's go. That was definitely a factor. Come on, folks. Like, yeah. So I think like leading up to Peace Talks, Ebenezer was pretty much always on Harry's side, and Harry is very, very like biased towards Ebenezer. I also just think it would be funny for like the wise old mentor to be the character who goes on a corruption arc, and then have the younger brother vampire like stay good, because like every other series ever is like, if you're reading a fantasy story and it's like, oh, the character has a younger brother who's a vamp, they're going to betray the protagonist.
And I think that corruption arcs are really kind of something that we need to see more of. I've always really enjoyed those.
Yeah, they're great.
And so I feel like a slow burn corruption arc would be like something great that this series could do.
Yeah, and a corruption arc for Harry doesn't work. It's just it goes too. It doesn't work thematically with the story. It's not who he is.
No, and plus,
Um,
like if we were halfway through the series, even then it wouldn't make sense.
like
But
the
like we're
entire
like what,
point,
two
yeah.
thirds of the way through the series at this point, and pretty much, and it would just be so like forced and out of nowhere that it just.
Yeah, and
But
like
with Ebenezer, who's always been kind of like a main side character, that I feel like that's probably like one of the prime positions to like pick someone to be to like have a corruption arc.
yeah, also like the entire point of Harry's arc is like, well, not the entire point, but a point of it is that despite like he has all these surrounding factors that would lead to have someone to a corruption arc, but he's still choosing to, he still can choose to be a good person. That's like the
Do
entire
you think
point,
that,
kind of. So it would
so like
really,
really devolving into the tinfoil hat theories now, if you think that Ebenezer's gonna have like a full blown corruption arc and he's gonna like go full like, in book 22 or whatever, do you think that he's gonna die and like that Harry's gonna have to put him down, kind of like Susan and changes?
I think he's probably the character with the lowest chance of making it to the end of the series alive. I literally cannot think of a character who I think is more sure to die than Ebenezer. Yes, I think Harry will probably have to kill him.
I think that's gonna be like tough to read. Like.
I could see Harry becoming the Blackstaff,
Mhm.
like in the council, where it's kind of like he's in it, but kind of separate from its laws. I mean, he's kind of doing this thing where he's the Wizard of Chicago, and he's kind of been like, I'm the Winter Knight. You guys are busy as fuck. I'm going to do what I want. Come at me, bro.
Mhm.
I'll go sit in Demon Reach and fight the entire council if I have to. Do you want a repeat of Turncoat? I will literally solo your organization if we fight on Demon Reach again. Fuck off. Also, you guys are way too busy to worry about the fact that I'm doing my thing. Like,
I don't
so
know how the White Council is still going. Like, I have no idea how they're
well,
still like so, like they're still stretched like very fairly thin, but at the same time, like they've been stretched thin for so long. It's a surprise that like they're still
they're
kind of.
just they're really powerful and they're
Yeah.
really rich and they have a lot of information. And like thing is, like, you know how Harry, he has like his kind of base things and then he has tricks and like things that he can go to if he really has to. The thing
Yeah.
to keep in mind is that like all the old wizards have those.
Hmm.
Like Jim has said, like everyone in the senior council has like a ton of like allies and stuff that they've built up. We just don't know what they are. He's also said in an interview, someone asked him, this was like a question. I'm the one who wrote this question. This is self-praise. What like point of view short story would change how we look at the Dresden Files the most? And he picked the Merlin. So there's a lot going on there that Harry is just completely unaware of because I mean you can see with the Thomas short story, there's literally a war going on in the background for thousands of years that
Right.
Harry is just like completely unaware of, right?
Yeah. And I don't know if this is like a trope or anything, but I always really have liked the kind of ancient organization thing where there's always like this dark, like organization working from the shadows, or at least there's been like underground fighting or war going on for like a really long time. And I kind of like that being like incorporated more heavily into the series.
Yeah,
And
the
I
real
know.
question is like Christos was probably Black Council, and I'm pretty sure he died in Battleground. So I wonder what the effect of that is going to be. Although we might have just been stupid.
Yeah, I think there was a lot of speculation on whether or not he was Black Council, but I can't remember ever getting like a confirmation on
It
that.
never got confirmed. At the end, it changes. Like he says to Ebenezer, like he could be Black Council or stupid. I'm not sure what worse. And Ebenezer's like stupid, Hoss. Like
Yeah, the
those like
last thing the White
evil.
Council,
Yeah.
last thing the White Council needs is stupid people in it,
Yeah,
especially like,
exactly. And it's
yeah,
like evil only rears its head every once in a while, but stupid is every day.
Yeah.
I love Harry's description of him in Peace Talks of Christos. I forget the first half. It's like, slightly like better dressed than everyone else and slightly more Black Council like likely to be a part of the Black Council than everyone else. I'm like, yeah. Anyway, he died. So that if he was Black Council, they're kind of like, damn it, we worked for so long to get someone on the senior council. And then this bitch Titan Ethnu just showed up and ruined it. Like,
Yeah. So something I did want to ask you about, or at least talk about for a little while, was like two things. Your like a couple of your favorite Dresden books and a couple of the ones that you think are more like underrated.
okay.
If you want to use
Favorite.
that. Yeah.
Sure. Favorite is pretty easy. I don't exactly have hot takes here. My 4 favorite Dresden books are Changes, huge shock,
Mhm.
Battleground, Skin Game, and Cold Days.
Mhm.
Um,
Mine's pretty similar to that.
let's see, underrated. Thing is, like the Dresden books I like tend to be the more popular ones. So I actually don't. I guess can I pick Summer Night and Ghost Story? But I mean, it's not like Ghost Story is just so different. Where I think Ghost Story
Right.
is an excellent execution of what it's trying to do. It does definitely have some flaws.
Mhm.
Like I will admit that. I like Ghost Story more every time I reread it. When I first read Ghost Story, it would probably be bottom third, and now it's kind of slowly worked its way to top third somehow. I don't know how that happened.
Yeah,
Um,
that's kind of where Ghost Story is at for me right now. Like I can appreciate what it was trying to do, and I can appreciate like certain parts of it. But like overall, it wasn't great for me. But at the same time, like even when I was reading it like last month, I felt like it was a book that I know I'll appreciate more on a reread.
yeah, it's kind of like it definitely has some issues. Like I'm not going to pretend it's perfect. Like Jim in some ways struggles with having Harry as almost a completely passive protagonist.
Mhm.
Um, where there's some like scenes where like there's conflict, and I'm kind of like, okay, the way this got resolved, like he might be struggling a little bit because you're going from Harry being able to just be like fuego to
Mhm.
being able to do nothing, and so he has to like win fights by talking to people and convincing them to win fights, whatever.
I was
The
gonna say
plot,
because it feels like a lot of people were doing the work for him, like in that book. But
yeah, and then also like the story with Fitz, like the character is just it's fine.
mhm.
But on the other hand, like seeing the aftermath with Molly,
Mhm.
um, especially when you know that when you're rereading and you know that she killed Harry at his request,
Mhm.
um, is amazing. Like I love the scene. I think it's so well written. It's some of like Jim's best writing. When Harry goes through realizes that like memory is how he can do magic, and he goes through the memory of the first time he did the old Flickenbickus, and then he uses that memory to like do it here, and it's like the flames were like just as beautiful when I first did it. Also, that's like such a fundamental part of Harry's character. It's almost the fundamental, or I'll say a fundamental part of his character is that he loves and believes in magic for its own sake.
Mhm.
So like Harry not being able to do magic, it isn't like, it isn't how like I would feel. I'd be like, oh, practically like this sucks. Like, if I'm playing a video game and like I lose my abilities for a mission, it's like he fundamentally believes that magic is a force for good that should protect others. And it's almost one of the main part of his characters, and it's like motivates a lot of what he does. Anyways, I love that part in Ghost Story, and then also him basically being like realizing that he caused like half of this shit that's going on,
Yeah.
and how many people are screwed over, and then his realization that he still wouldn't change what he did because like it was his only option.
Yeah. When you were talking about how he was like trying to figure out like how to do the Flickumbicus again, I loved like the flashbacks that he had in Ghost Story. Like that was probably some of my favorite stuff in there, and his interactions with Murphy's dad. And because I feel like that's kind of he sees a lot of like where Murphy came from and like how she was formed. And I think that like considering that they were at a pretty like romantic stage at that point, I feel like that was a good like progression of her character without her really being present. I thought that was really well handled. And at the same time, I did really like the stuff with Molly. I feel like a lot of people have an issue with the way Molly was handled until they get to that reveal, because they're like, oh, well, Molly's she's being like depressed, like, she's acting ridiculous. But at the same time, Molly has a terrible life. Like,
Yeah.
like I don't blame her. Is she like the only sane person, here who's like actually getting upset about the way things are and the way things have to be?
Yeah. And then obviously when it's like, yeah, Molly's actually kind of killed him. It's like, oh, yeah, Harry, that was a dick move. You did not consider the consequences that would have on the grasshopper.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like that was kind of like you said, just kind of in a very inconsiderate, and it really sucks. But I think it's also like it kind of really helped her, that book, like at least her development. Because I feel like if there wasn't that, I don't really know like what she could have been doing that whole time.
Yeah, like it's definitely it's the most interesting and like, wait, I think he could have taken the character. Going back to Murphy's dad, my favorite part about Murphy's dad is at the end when Uriel is like, what? You told him like one of his friends would die? And he was just like, what? It was a dangerous situation. One of them would probably die. And Uriel was just like, this guy. And he's just like, we're going to talk about this later. And Murphy's dad is just, straight up like sunglasses on, deal with it, Mr. Sunshine. Yeah. And I'm like, yeah, that's Murphy's dad. That is that.
Like it makes sense that he would be that way, considering the way Murphy is.
Yeah. That is the Murphy line. That checks out.
So for me, I think that my favorite books, like in no particular order, are Changes, Cold Days, and Small Favor.
I think with those.
I think that Battleground is probably number 4, and after that, I'm not totally sure, but I know that like Blood Rights and Full Moon are at the bottom pretty much.
Yeah, they're.
I mean, like that. Not that that's a hot take or anything, but
yeah, it's like sometimes I tell people when they're rereading the series for the first time, like, yeah, you know how sometimes like a book isn't that enjoyable the first time you read it, but then like on reread, all the like intricacies are like revealed and you see things from a new light. Sorry, not this time. Full Moon and Stormfront are actually just medium, not that good.
Yeah, I was rereading some of Full Moon before we actually hopped on here, and it was like I was reading some Marcone stuff, and I was like, it's so crazy to think about his development and like how far he goes from like being strung up, like left to die at the end of Full Moon, like, and Harry has to like help him out, to being like a Denarian at the end of Battleground, like
teleporting around,
his
neck broken and just being like,
when he got his neck,
now I'm mad.
When his neck was broke, I was like, but like I knew that like something was up. I knew like Jim wouldn't just kill Marcone like that,
Yeah, I really like how Harry's development has kind of mirrored Marcone. Where especially one that's a little bit depressing is they both kind of are getting more and more involved with like supernatural and getting supernatural allies. Like in some way, Harry has kind of traded allies where like, before in a previous book where he would call the alphas, he now calls up fucking Odin. But one thing is they both had one purely like vanilla mortal connection. And it was Murphy for Harry and it was Hendrix for Marcone. And they are both gone.
Or Hendrix, right? I mean, like, I always knew that I was gonna see him as soon as Marcone showed up. And so I always liked, like Jim Butcher kind of describing him as like a big like Conor McGregor.
And Harry never learned that he could, not only could he talk, but he was writing his dissertation for like an English degree that was like 1,500 pages long and just kept getting longer. Like, He just doesn't talk to Harry, so Harry assumes that he's like just
I mean, why
the
would
simpleton.
Hendrix talk? Why would Hendrix like waste
Yeah,
his time talking
Henrix
to Harry?
Henrix is very wise. He has
Yeah, I
realized
mean, like
do
Harry
not
is
talk to Harry.
yeah, like Harry's a smartass. Marcone has to talk to him because like he has to talk to him. Hendrix
Yeah.
doesn't have to say shit. Like
Henrix has realized that he has the choice and the option to not talk with Harry Dresden, and he's made the very wise choice. Yeah,
he's consistently made that choice, and for that, I salute
yeah,
him.
yeah. Good job, Henrix. You'll be missed.
Yep.
Because got killed by Ethne. Oops.
But going back to Marcone, like in Death Masks, he was so good.
Yeah.
I like at the end when they were on top of the train and Marcone was just like such a badass. Like, oh
yeah. Then pulls Harry out with the Shroud of Turin. Well, not actually the Shroud of Turin. It was the fake Shroud of Turin, but he didn't know that at the time, so he still gets full marks. And then yeah, obviously like Harry tracks him at the end. And oh, I love Marcone. Yeah,
that
Marcone
was great. I love that because obviously that kind of like there's some context for it like later on in the series, but at the time I thought that was like his daughter or something. I was like, poor Marcone.
What's going on?
Man. But then obviously you find out, I can't remember what book it was, that you know that was like a debt that he kind of.
I also can't remember. Would it be White Knight?
I thought it was White Knight, but
I think it's White Knight. I should know considering how many times I've read the series, but I'm pretty sure it's White Knight.
I remember like reading it. I remember it being a big thing, like that stuck with me, but I can't for the life of me remember what book it was.
Yeah, or how it happened.
I know it wasn't Small Favor, and I know it wasn't Turncoat.
I'm pretty sure it was White Knight.
Yeah, probably. Anyway. I don't know why I can't remember that, but yeah, Cold Days is great because of like what it does for Molly, and it felt like a repeat of Summer Night in a way. It felt like there was an expansion, and like it felt like there was a lot of progression in terms of like how Harry sees the world, because he's like essentially working for the bad guys, you know, like if that's what you want to call it. And
yeah, I mean, Cold Days is arguably the most like actually for underhyped. You know what? Actually, you're right. Despite how much I like it, it is the most underhyped Dresden book because, like, yeah, most people are like Cold Days is really good, but it doesn't get talked about as much, and like it's so good.
And I don't know why, because the first like 100 pages are great. Like, you know, when he's at the party and he's talking to like Kringle and Eldest Gruff, I was like, these people were like villains, and now Harry's just like, hey, how you doing?
Well, Eldest Gruff was a pretty chill villain in his defense.
Yeah, he was, but I love that scene with him and Small Favor.
Yeah, with the donut.
They just like start talking about like how they're represented in movies and TV and stuff, and I was like, this is great. It's like meta. Like,
and then in Peace Talks, Mab is like, yeah, we owe Lara favors, so she can ask you whatever you want. And Harry's like, I got a donut. And Mab's like, that's your fault. And Harry's like, okay, well, donut did save my life. Fair enough. Yeah, and Cold Days also, I think, arguably has probably the two most mind-blowing world-building reveals. Where you have Demon Reach being like a super ultra-max prison for ancient deities, which I did not see coming. And then that winter is like defends the outer gates, which that changes so much of how you look at the Fae politics on rereads. Because like you're gonna get to parts where Maeve is like, yeah, Mab's crazy and is like trying to take the world down. And now you know, like all Mab has to do to destroy the world is nothing.
Yeah. Like stop fighting and everything's done.
Yeah, like as soon as you learn about the outer gates, reading Cold Days, you're kind of immediately like, okay, so Mab isn't like the bad guy here, because again, if she wanted to destroy the world, all she has to do is, you know, open a book and read for a while and just do nothing for like.
I mean, turn on days. Like Mab can just Netflix and chill, and then like next thing you know, world's gone.
Like, yeah, not even world, reality. Bye.
Yeah. I mean, there's like such huge things like outside the gates that like, I mean, just let her fight it. Like, stop complaining and just let her fight it.
Yeah, and like that's why Leia exists, and that's why you almost never see Leia and Mab like in the same place. You do very rarely, but
And the thing
when
is, I didn't
Mab,
really notice that until like later on. But
because when Mab is dealing with the pesky mortals, she needs someone to go make sure the gates to reality don't fall.
I think Leia's great. I always love when she's on the page.
Yeah. Also, we get to talk to in Cold Days the person who is probably my favorite, not in like super big character, which is Rashid, the gatekeeper, who literally steals every scene he's in. You cannot find me a scene where he's in that he doesn't steal. You can try, but you will fail.
Yeah, he's really cool. But for me, I didn't expect to love Cold Days as much as I do. Like, I've always been more of like a Fae, at least in Dresden, like a Fae guy, because I feel like you've got your vampire guys, like your courts, like who loves your courts, and people who love, the Fae. And I've always liked vampires, at least in the kind of like Black Court, Bram Stoker, Dracula kind of vampires. And I think that the Fae politics are more interesting than the vampire politics. And at least like, unless we're talking about like White Knight, because like that was really good. But like outside of that, in like Cold Days and Summer Night and Small Favor, I think that like the Fae stuff is like actually really good. And I feel like the consequences of Fae politics are a lot bigger than the consequences of like vampire politics. It just feels like much more grounded. And typically I like grounded stuff more, but I just didn't find the vampires as interesting as the Fae.
I'm in the same boat as you. I am a Fae stan. They tend to be some of my favorite books are the ones involving the Fae. Mab is after Battleground, maybe my favorite Dresden character, not named Harry Dresden. I feel like when you ask someone their favorite Dresden character, you kind of have to be like, who's your favorite character not named Harry Dresden? Because it's kind of like it's probably Harry, but
Yeah,
I
because with
like Mab, I think is I haven't reread the rest of the series since I reread Battleground. It's one of the things I'm looking forward to looking at is really who Mab is as a person.
Mhm.
I think the way Mab's character was handled in Battleground was like nothing short of brilliant.
Mhm.
Um,
And something like for me, the Fae politics are just, I can name more Fae characters than I can vampire characters. I love Laura. I think that she's great. And Thomas is okay. I think that's probably like one of my hot takes for Dresden is that Thomas is like just okay.
yeah, I mean, I know like one person who has Thomas as their favorite side character. He's definitely not as beloved as like Michael or people like
And the
that.
thing is,
I
like,
think he's going to take up Amarachius though. So
yeah, like when I first started reading the series, I saw like a lot of love for Thomas, but now I don't see it as much. And I think that Thomas has his moments, but they weren't nearly what I expected. Kind of like going into the series.
I
I
don't
think,
like Thomas that well. I'd like him, but not like on the Dresden scale of how much I like him. I
yeah,
don't like him as much as the others, but I think his like relationship with Harry,
mhm,
like as brothers, is amazing.
yeah,
Um,
no, absolutely, yeah, I agree.
like going back to Cold Days, like when they reunite with Cold Days, that scene is so good.
Especially kind of like the way they interacted, like post blood rights. I think like um, when Thomas was living with Harry, and I remember like how Harry had to pretend that he was like Thomas's lover in White Knight.
He
That
had to
was
do that a
great.
couple times. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's come up a few times. Butters thought that he was their boyfriend deadbeat, and then in
right.
White Knight he was trying to get into Thomas's like apartment. So yeah, that's come up a couple times.
So are you? How do you feel about Butters? Do you really like him or?
He peaked too early. He peaked in Deadbeat. And he has his moments. But overall, if I were to make a Dresden tier list, he would be in the bottom half of the Dresden tier list for sure.
I'm kind of in that same boat too. I think that he has like some good moments, and I like his character progression, but at the same time, it just feels like we've kind of lost a little bit of what made Butters great to start with. And I feel like people might disagree with that.
Yeah, he's just kind of like,
Like
a lot of people are kind of like, is he really like that good as a Knight of the Cross? And like, he has a fucking lightsaber, so like, I get that he's successful, but he's just not as interesting as a lot of the other people to me. He has his moments like in Battleground when he stops Harry from killing Rudolph, even though I wanted Harry to kill Rudolph. But it was a great character moment for Butters.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna forget my hatred. Serenity now.
Serenity now, insanity later.
Yeah, exactly. Although like Jim, when he wrote that chapter after Murphy dies, he was feeling particularly mean. Where like he starts this chapter with Harry going on about how like hate is serene, and I'm just like, what the hell is going on?
I was like, Harry, chill out, man. I know that Murphy just died, but like, come on.
And then like the sword burns Harry, and it's like, yeah, the burned hand teaches best, folks.
And the burned hand, that was something I really like about this series, is how you can feel the long-lasting consequences of like Harry's mistakes, particularly the burned hand. And like with Demon Reach, even though that's not like really a negative thing, that's lasted a while, and I feel like you can still kind of feel like how important that is.
Yeah, I mean, if you think of the consequences of the vampire ball in Grave Peril, if you go back and reread Grave Peril and go like, all right, what are all the consequences of the events that happened here? It's an insane amount of consequences.
I mean, it started the war for one thing, and the war lasted like what, 9 books until they
and Leia
destroyed.
also got infected there because she got gifted the Athame. And a bunch of other stuff happened. Like that was definitely an
we could spend like the rest of the video like talking about all the consequences of that.
Yeah, that is a dense scene in terms of things happening, and I'm sure there's a ton of stuff that happened that we're not aware of. I mean, we still don't know why Pharaohvax was there.
Yeah, Death Masks had some really good like kind of a continuation of what happened in Grave Peril, at least in terms of the war. Like
then Death Mask had some events that had long-term consequences, and Jim won a bet.
I love Death Masks. And
Death Mask is great.
Like lately, I've seen some people kind of like rank it lower, and I'm like, how can you do that? It's so good.
It is. Like, the thing is, like, by the end, it's like a middle of the pack Dresden book, but it's my favorite of the first 5.
And the thing is, like, probably it's been like a year since I've read it, so I'm probably just like hyping it up too much in my own mind, and like reread's gonna like totally screw it up for me.
No, it's still really good.
I mean, the moments like still stick with me, like especially toward the end, like we already talked about. But I'm actually really excited to reread this series, like the whole thing, not just any one book, but like the whole thing. Which I don't really say that often about like any series, but
the reread is going to be disappointing in Stormfront or Full Moon. You're like, why am I doing this? But then it'll get really good.
Like I can kind of deal with that. I feel like since it's 2 books and not like
they're really short as well.
Yeah,
like you'll read them in a day.
And the thing is, I did like when I first read them, like I read the first 7 books in 2 weeks, and although that's nothing compared to like Pranav's speed,
I don't even know what Pranav did. Like,
I don't even get me started. I think like Pranav, like, answer us one question. Are you a robot?
He's a robot. He's gonna say he's not a robot. He might not know he's a robot, but he's a robot.
No, I've got one even better for you. He's a creature from beyond the gates. That's like ability is he can just read superhumanly fast.
So
like,
we're now, just to be clear, we've moved on from tinfoil hat about the Dresden Files to tinfoil hat about people we talk to on Discord. Okay. Also, Death Mask. Do you know about the bet that Death Masks won?
No, I didn't. I know about
So
the Alara debt, the Alara bet, but
Jim
beyond
Butcher bet someone that he could write a plot relevant BDSM scene.
did I miss something?
Yeah, he tied up Susan, remember, in Death Mask because she was going crazy. And that conceived
Oh,
Maggie, which is the reason changes happened. Plot
yeah.
relevant.
Yeah, I remember now. Oh, wow. He planned that like that far in advance. That wow.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah, he planned almost everything.
now that like
He
you're like unlocking parts in my brain. I feel like I'm Harry and Ghost Story.
exactly, yeah.
Like my memory is just like expanding now.
My favorite Death Mask detail though on reread though. That's actually something that sometimes people criticize on first read and then on reread it's great. Is for the duel with Ortega, Thomas is kind of acting like kind of an idiot, like he's getting drunk. And the
Yeah.
first time you read it, it's like this guy's kind of an idiot. The second time, it's like, oh, he thinks he's about to watch his brother die, and he's drinking a bunch to try and cope with it. Oh, that was a little bit of a darker reason than I was aware of when I first read that.
Cheers.
I think Jim Butcher writing to win a bet may be the best author of all time. Like he's normally not, but then if
I
you
just
bet
want
him
to
something,
like if I ever see him, I just want to bet, like make a bet with him just so he can write more books.
yeah, and you will lose. Like he will win.
Yeah.
And at
And the thing is,
100%
like,
of
going
writing
into
bets.
that, I know that because of the Death Masks bet and the Codex Alera bet. He wrote a 6-book series off of like a 1-sentence bet.
Yeah, yeah.
Like that's insane. Like
Yeah, and it's a really good series too.
and Jim is from Beyond the Gates too, because he can do that.
Yeah, I think we should just to get the highest quality books, we should just be like, I bet you can't write like an epic fantasy that is more successful than Lord of the Rings.
Yeah,
And
I bet you can't write a Sanderson length Dresden book.
Unfortunately, like the publisher for Dresden, I don't know how this is going to work for the Bat. He might have to get a different publisher for the Bat. They're not equipped to write the tomes, which is why Peace Talks and Battleground had to get split.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure that the original publisher got like bought by someone else because it was like Rock Books or whatever. Now it's like Ace.
Yeah, it's changed.
Yeah, I was gonna say I think they got bought by somebody else or something, like some kind of merger or something like that. But
I don't know. I had a question and now I forgot what the question was. Crap. Oh yeah. So for the Big Apocalyptic Trilogy, here's the question, and it's split 2 parts. It's 1, what do you want? 2, what do you think will happen? And it's, do you want it to stay all first person point of view from Dresden, or do you want other point of views in there as well?
that's difficult because we have gotten other POVs in the past, and I don't prefer them to Dresden, but it's kind of like a Red Rising second trilogy situation where it's like I didn't expect this to happen, but I like it. And
So
I
yeah,
I feel like the potential to really enjoy it is there, but it's hard to really know that. Yeah, it's hard to like base that off of like one Marcone perspective story and like a Thomas perspective story and like a Murphy. I mean, Murphy's dead, obviously, but like, it's difficult because if like Marcone and Thomas were the POV characters, were some of the additional POV characters, yeah, and maybe Molly too. But if like those were the 4, like all of them together, I think it's not a question of whether or not Jim can pull it off. It's just how would it flow with the rest of the series. Obviously, it's the big apocalyptic trilogy. Ooh, cute cat.
yes, I'm bringing cat cameo time. She was meowing at me, so the cat interrupted you. So this is where I'm at on this. I think it's probably all going to be in Harry's perspective. What I think would kind of be cool is I think it should definitely still be mostly Harry. I think Harry's the best character in the series. He's still the protagonist. I think it would not be good if it became like a Wheel of Time situation where Harry has like 20% of the point of views. But I want Harry to have like 80% of the point of views.
Yeah.
Where it's like, it's mostly Harry, but we get like a Marcone chapter sprinkled in. If she's not dead, oh hi. If she's not dead, a Mab chapter. Mab would writing from Mab's perspective would be really hard though. You
I
might
feel
not be
like
able to do it.
I feel like Mab, like having Mab be a POV character would be like Animander Rake being a like
Yeah.
POV character. You know,
Although
I
he
mean, like
actually
he
does
kind
have,
of was like a little bit, but
yeah.
like I feel like beyond that, like Mab is just such a like old being. But at the
Yeah.
same time, I really liked when Ethnia was talking about how she remembered when Mab was like a human or something. I was like, excuse me?
Yeah. Remember
Elaborate on that, please.
Mab at the end of Cold Days? I was mortal once.
Yeah, and I remember that and I was like, can you like repeat that for me, Mab? You want to like give me an info dump real quick?
Yeah, and Ethnu, actually, before you go on your like evil monologue, could you just like info dump us a little bit here? Like,
Yeah, could you like pull a Dr. Doofenshmirtz and like just give us backstory?
yeah,
You know,
please,
that would,
please narrate. Yeah.
yeah.
Um,
I really like Mab. I never expected to like for her to be such a like important character, let alone like her so much. Like
yeah, I
she
think
has
like Dresden, I know there's some people reading Dresden right now who I guess aren't watching this, so I can't say hi to them. Hi, Dylan of the future, if you ever go back and watch this. Who kind of say that like, especially early Dresden antagonists aren't like the best ever. And I kind of agree, but I think the real strength is like the frenemies. Like Marcone,
right.
Leia, Lara, Mab, are all fantastic. And then I think, are we on agreement? Best Dresden antagonist is Nicodemus, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Okay. Yeah, okay.
In
Good.
Small Favor, like probably one of my favorite scenes in Small Favor to like sidetrack is when they're at the aquarium and he's like talking to Dresden and the whole like chapter, the whole interaction he has with Dresden is like a metaphor or whatever, and then like everything just like goes to shit real quick.
And also
I
he was just
love
trying
that.
to distract Dresden, which
Yeah.
One of like there are like kind of two types of twists. They're like the twists that are reveals and the twists that escalate the stakes. One of my favorite stake escalation twists of all time is the chapter ends with Harry saying they're coming for Ivy, like to Kincaid. And it's just like, oh shit, that's what the plan is. Because for that, you're not really sure what the plan is. You're like, okay, they want to make Marcone one of them. Like that would be bad. But like compared to starting a super plague, are we on the same level here? It's like, oh nope, they want the sum of all human knowledge. Oh, that would be bad. That would be bad. I wonder if Nicodemus knows about the Oblivion War.
I thought I really liked Nicodemus in Death Masks, but like compared to how good he is in Small Favor and even further Skin Game, like I never really like could tell that he was gonna be like that great a villain, you know? Because I had heard Jim say that Nicodemus was gonna come back like once every 5 books or whatever, and like I can handle that because you know I can expect it. And although Skin Game is not in my top 3 favorite Dresden books, it still is a very good Dresden book. And it's really crazy to me how like Small Favor, Death Mask, and Skin Game all have like a very similar cast of characters, like same villain, and they continue like they somehow manage to be like consistent quality despite like whatever else is going on. Because like you like some people would argue you have a dip in quality with like Ghost Story or like Blood Rights, but like still in between those books that aren't great, you still have like the consistency of the Nicodemus like books. And I think that that's really great. I really like that.
Funny thing is like Ghost Story and Blood Rights are kind of weird because it's like from a writing perspective, like I think I don't know if Ghost Story is better written than Changes, but I think like Blood Rights is, from a writing perspective, is like as good as Death Master, better. The problem is just the story is just not that interesting.
Yeah,
by comparison.
Yeah,
like the Black Court plot. This is literally the Black Court plot. There are vampires, Black Court vampires. Harry's like, Bob, go find the vampires. Bob's like, I didn't find the vampires. Harry's like, go find the vampires. Bob, I still didn't find them. Harry's like, go damn find them. And Bob's like, okay, I found them. Harry's like, okay, I got people. We got vampires. Let's go kill them.
Like, controversial opinion, I think, but I think the Black Court is the best court.
I can see that.
I mean, like, obviously the White Court is probably the most relevant in terms of like how they interact with Dresden, and you know,
I mean, yeah, throughout the series, the Red Court has still probably played the biggest role, but obviously they're not going to play a role in the future.
Yeah,
so.
I mean, they haven't played a role in like five books,
Yeah.
so, you know, but like I feel like the White Court's okay, and the whole like psychic feeding off of like emotions and specifically like sex and stuff, like that was interesting, but at a certain point it just kind of felt a little repetitive. But with the Black Court, I felt like there was the more, like I said before, like the whole like ancient organization vibe where like you know that these people are like old as fuck and like they've been around a really long time, and like you don't mess with them because
I mean, we met Drackle, who
that was awesome. Like I remember freaking out about that in battle when I read Battleground. I was like, Drackle, what?
Yeah, and especially so, you was like have the advantage of having watching like thing, but... yeah, Maverick was like the least powerful in there. You don't have the advantage of watching like every Jim Butcher interview. So Drackle has been mentioned because once someone asked Jim Butcher, like who could beat Mab in a fight, and the list was short, but it wasn't non-existent. And the list went something like, Uriel could, but he wouldn't. Yeah. The mothers could, but they wouldn't. And there were two names he gave with basically no disclaimers. He's just like, yeah, these people could beat Mab. And one was Farovax. Farovax could beat Mab in a fight. And the other was Drackle. And then he's like, maybe the entire White Council, not just the wards, but like all of them, if they all teamed up and they summoned her with her true name into a circle, and they just like all went all out, they maybe could. They'd have a good chance.
Maybe.
Yeah, maybe.
Oh God.
Titania would be like a coin flip in the literal sense.
I like Titania, but I feel like most of her scenes have just been like hit or miss for me. Like there are times.
Yeah, I mean she's not as interesting as Mab is. Let's just be real.
Yeah, I mean, but like, I don't know. What's your first like your favorite early Dresden book? Kind of like getting off track a little bit.
What counts as early?
Like,
because I mean, I like Grave Peril more than Stormfront, and then I like Summer Night more than Grave Peril, and then I like Death Masks more than Summer Night, and then I like Deadbeat more than Death Masks. So
okay, so I'd probably say like first 7 books.
Deadbeat.
So you say Deadbeat, yeah.
Yeah.
I read Deadbeat at like a time where I was kind of going into a reading slump, so I feel like I didn't really appreciate it as much, except for like the end, and like where he's riding on the dinosaur and like the stuff with like Lucio like getting a different body and all that stuff. But honestly, like so many people like put Deadbeat really high up, and I wish I could be in that camp because like everyone loves that book.
Yeah, it's fantastic. You're missing out.
And still like Death Masks is my favorite out of the first 7. But I'd probably have it like Death Masks, Summer Night, Deadbeat, like Grave Peril.
Summer Night over Deadbeat. That is a hot take. So Deadbeat.
So, like based on what I remember, I feel like a reread, like I actually think a reread would change that. Just because of like how Deadbeat is kind of like the events in Deadbeat and the characters in that book are kind of like utilized later on in the series. I feel like I would kind of appreciate that that's like where it started. But
also like on reread of Dresden, when you kind of have the context of knowing how good Dresden can get, the upward trend in quality becomes even more apparent.
And that's what I've seen like with people in the Discord who have been like rereading the series, like Pranav specifically, like you saw how many like books he has in the S tier now, like compared to like a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, and it's also like what happens is, this is my theory on what happens. When you read the series for the first time, a lot of the time, if you're comparing, like, I don't know, Death Masks to Cold Days or whatever, you compare the events of the books in your head. But then after you've read, I don't know, 7 straight, like really, really well written Dresden books, and you go back to Death Masks, the difference in like pure quality of writing becomes more apparent.
Mhm.
Um, and so a lot of the time, like when people first read the series, an early favorite really holds out as like a top 3 Dresden book throughout the entire thing.
Okay.
That usually it gets kind of stamped down on reread, and you're like, okay, no, the later Dresden books are even better than I remember, and the early Dresden books, they're still good, but they're not as good.
Hmm.
Um,
As much as
now I'm moving to Deadbeat because I love Deadbeat.
Mhm.
So I'm gonna say why I love Deadbeat. First off, this is just a random thing. If I was going to show someone like Jim Butcher's really good at dialogue, here's a scene that shows why. I'm gonna take the scene where Lucio and Corpse Taker body swap, because when people are reading that for the first time, like Corpse Taker body swaps with Lucio, and she says like 6 words, and Harry figures out that it's not Lucio and shoots her. And no one ever doesn't believe it. And she says really normal things. Like the first word she says is excellent. And it's like, it's super obvious it's not Lucio, like 1 word in. It's like, I met Lucio 100 pages ago, and I don't know Corpse Taker at all, but there's no chance Lucio says excellent there. Where it's like Morgan comes back and is like, yeah, we killed the people over here. And Lucio's like, excellent. And it's like, it just, it instantly feels wrong. Like you can instantly tell,
Yeah.
despite saying really normal things. Anyways, Deadbeat as a whole, I think from a Harry Dresden development perspective, Deadbeat is the strongest book of the first 7. He's got his struggles with being afraid of fire as a primarily fire wizard. His like dealing with responsibility, like he kind of gets like the Bach books in trouble, for example. It's got the best twist of the first 7 books by far, and I actually think it's really the first really good Dresden twist, and then almost every book after it has a really good Dresden twist, and no book before it has a twist that's nearly as good.
Mhm.
With the Sheila reveal, which is so well done, like with Sheila being Lassiel. Um, it's Butters' strongest book as a character.
Right.
Thomas and Harry are probably my favorite like brothers in fiction, and their relationship is amazing in Deadbeat. From a pure character moment with Thomas, the scene where they're like running and he knocks the water bottle out to explain it is so well written.
Mhm.
What else is Deadbeat got? It's got a fucking zombie Tyrannosaurus Rex. Like, what
Yeah.
more do you want in your
I
life?
mean, like, if that's all I remembered from that book, which it pretty much is, like, I remember Butter's introduction and the fact that there were like necromancers in it, like a shit ton of them, and Lucio's body swap. But like, the one thing that will always stick out to me is that fucking zombie
It's a
Tyrannosaurus.
pretty memorable thing, right?
Yeah, like, I have never read anything like that. And in no subsequent Dresden book do you get anything that is like that at all.
Apparently, so when Jim first outlined the series, that was one of the scenes he was most excited to write.
Can you imagine waiting 7 books to write that shit?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if are you aware of how much Jim planned forward?
No.
So Jim, he was in university and he was like taking a writing class that was like
Mm-hmm.
a practical writing class, like writing to get published. So literally the assignment was write a book to get published. Like that was the final exam assignment. Jim's the only one who got an A because he got published. And he was a very stubborn student who didn't listen to what his teacher said. He finally did listen to what his teacher said, trying to do it to prove the teacher wrong, like trying to prove that it wouldn't work. So he wrote the beginning of Stormfront, and his teacher was like, this is actually good. Like you could sell this, go home and plan the rest of it. And she meant, plan the rest of Stormfront. And he went and he wrote out a 20 book outline with a big apocalyptic trilogy at the end outline for the entire Dresden Files.
You're telling me this man wrote the outline for the big apocalyptic trilogy like 20 plus
Yeah,
years ago?
before he wrote chapter 2 of Stormfront. Yeah.
What?
Yeah, like some things have changed, like he's not, but
Well,
the
yeah.
general events have like stayed the same. Obviously, there's some books that have been added. Main ones being Peace Talks and Battleground got split, and he's added 12 months now. So there have been some things that have changed, and there were some things he wasn't completely sure about. Like he actually didn't plan out for changes. Like he knew Harry would take a power up, but he played it by ear on which power up would make more sense between the Winter Knight, Lassiel, and the Word of Kemmler. But yeah, he planned that then. So he knew that there was going to be a zombie riding T-Rex, and he knew Ethne was going to attack Chicago. So there were quite a few scenes he was excited to write.
That's crazy. Like, wow.
Which also means we need to track down Jim's writing instructor and be like, you've seen the outline to Dresden. Tell us your secrets.
Like, we're going to have to like pull a ghost story on her and like unlock her memory.
Yeah.
Like the perfect memory, and we'll figure out exactly like what happened.
Yeah. There's also a random funny thing. There's a Dresden RPG game, and they have like storylines that they made. And Jim had to tell them a bunch of world building like secrets. And so based on those world building secrets, one of the things they wrote is something that happens later. And like they got figured something out, and Jim was like, no, you can't write that. And they're like, what? It makes so much sense. Like we were so proud of it. And Jim's like, I know it makes so much sense. That's because it's correct. Damn it. Like that's what's going to happen. And they were like, oh, okay, I guess we won't write it then. Anyway, but I've always found it funny.
I don't know if we'll ever get it, but like another Dresden TV show would be great.
Oh yeah, like the first one was so disappointing. Anyways, why did they just like nix the plot? They were just like, oh yeah, let's just make it discount supernatural. That's what everyone wants.
So I know it only got like one season or whatever. What was it kind of like following Stormfront, or was it like a weird amalgamation of?
No, it wasn't an amalgamation or following Stormfront. One of the episodes was Stormfront. And then all of the other episodes were other one-off stories that were unrelated and completely unrelated to the main plot of Dresden. Yeah, your facial expression is correct. Yes.
I'm probably going to get like gifts or something now, but like, that's crazy.
Yeah.
I
also, they decided to make up like world building stuff like Ancient Mai's a dragon. Yeah, which completely ignores what dragons are in the Dresden verse. Like dragons are scaly lizards that are like pretty powerful. They are fundamental. There's 3 of them left. No, Michael killed one. There's 2 of them left at the start of Dresden. Pharaohvax and Pyrovax. That's it. Also, here, random question. Switching off topic. So we've learned that power has a purpose in the Dresden world. One thing that I've tried to come up with a good theory for, and I don't have one, is the purpose of the dragon's powers, like Pharaohvax. So that's something I want you to think about. If you come up with an answer now, it means you're a genius. I still can't think of something. Considering the purpose of the Winter Lady, the archive, which I guess the archive isn't expressly told, but I can tell you later, and Mab's power, it's probably smarter than anything I can come up with.
Yeah. Like, I'll let you know once I reread the series as many times as you.
Okay. Also, the archive, like all that shit about like preserving human knowledge, that's all bullshit. She's purely for the Oblivion War. That is the point of the archive. She has anything that was ever written down, so she can tell when there's nothing like being written down or being learned about any figure. And then she has like a certain amount of time that she just holds the information of something that has been forgotten by mankind that the Oblivion War is trying to destroy. And like when nothing is on them for like a certain amount of time, that knowledge gets destroyed from her brain and it is gone forever.
I remember hearing something about like a Pharaohvax book. Is that gonna happen?
There's a dragon book. Yes, it'll be book 21.
Is that what do we know about that? Because I was always curious about that.
They're dragons and Harry Dresden. I'm already sold personally.
I was wondering if it's gonna be like from like Fairfax's perspective. I was like, that would be
No,
really
no, no.
weird.
It's a normal case file Dresden book. It's going to be book 21. It's
Okay.
just like, the, I guess, antagonist, or it's involving a storyline that involves dragons, which will be fun. Also, I
I
don't know
swear,
how
if no,
Harry's
if
gonna.
nobody says like Hic Sunt Draconis in it, I'm gonna be like, so
Anyway, man, how's Harry gonna deal with Fairfax? Fairfax is absurdly powerful. Um,
maybe they'll like come to some sort of like weird agreement or something. Like
yeah, I mean, I guess he could maybe take Fairfax on Demon Reach.
he
But
could, but
what
at the
couldn't he
same
take on
time,
Demon Reach? Also, Fairfax isn't Ethnu. He's not going to be stupid enough to fight Harry close to Demon Reach.
yeah. But at the same time, it's kind of like I really hope he doesn't take him to Demon Reach, not just because of like what you said, but at the same time, like, did you ever see the Flash live action show that came
I
out?
didn't. I've seen random clips on YouTube. Does that count for anything?
Okay, well, the thing is, I'm kind of like comparing these two things, but like in the Flash show, like whenever they would defeat a villain, they would essentially like lock him or her in like some sort of like power dampening cell, um, where they could not escape because they don't have powers, they can't escape. Like it's bulletproof, power proof, whatever. And so my concern is that something like Demon Reach would essentially become like that, and that Harry would just like imprison a bunch of like his enemies in there.
Yeah. Also, get
I don't
repetitive.
think
Like
that'll
he did it
happen.
with Ethnu, right?
Yeah. And the thing is, like, Ethnu is so ungodly powerful that like it's just like catching a Pokemon with like catching a really like level 1 Pokemon with a like a Master Ball or something.
Thing is, Fairfax is also ungodly powerful. The problem is he's so powerful that if he appears in the mortal world in his real form, the reality breaks.
So do you think that that means that like he'll have to take him in some other
Yeah, he'll have to
realm?
be in the Never Never.
Yeah.
Because Fairfax will just not be in his real form. Because like Fairfax, there's probably a case that if they fought in the Never Never, that Fairfax would 360 no scope Ethnu.
That would be great.
Because like he's like the mothers as well, where it's like, if they open a
He's that
portal,
powerful?
he's not as powerful as the mothers, but they both have the thing where like, if they were to fully go into the mortal world, reality just like would break. It's like, if you tried to roll a tank into a sandbox, that tank cannot sit in that sandbox.
No. Something I've always thought was interesting was kind of how Michael gets his power, like whenever he kind of calls on God, and like kind of like actually
it's
gets
really like, so a long time ago, randomly, just for fun, I tried to make a who would win in a fight tier list, and I included Michael, which was really dumb because the problem is Michael could lose to like Aragorn or someone because it'd just be a sword fight. But Michael can also beat basically anyone because that's how the sword works. The swords basically give you an even shot against anything, where it's like you have a chance against anything, and if you're capable of stabbing that thing in the face, it'll go. But also, it doesn't give you like if you're fighting someone like who's completely mortal, it's just a sword.
I mean, essentially, doesn't that like confirm the existence of like God in the Dresden world?
Yeah, I mean, all the gods are a thing in the Dresden verse. So
I feel like it's a little different because we have always like romanticized and kind of like mythologized like Odin stuff, and so like Odin being in there as like Kringle is like, oh my gosh, it's so cool. But like, Morgan Freeman showing up, like,
yeah, I doubt it's going to be. But I mean,
no, I mean,
Uriel is a character who's an archangel. So
yeah.
So, there's the question for Dresden verse isn't whether there is a god, like there is a being who would be the white god in Dresden verse. It's like, it's the Sonya question of, is it just an immensely powerful being, or is it God, which
and I think
is what's really going to be left.
I think that's really interesting to think about because it's like there's already so many like God level beings that like they're so powerful they might as well be a god. And so there is that question, that
Yeah.
you asked, that Sonia asked.
Keep in mind, theoretically, any white god would be more powerful than Uriel, and Uriel can unmake galaxies.
Mhm.
So we're
He can
looking
just hit the delete button, and
yeah, it's like he's like the administrator, where it's like Uriel is not going, like Uriel, like if FNU went up to Uriel and was like, I challenge you to a fight, and Uriel was free to like fight FNU, it would be like, so funnily enough, it has been confirmed theoretically, if Uriel were to just stand there for like a couple hours and just let FNU rail on him with the Eye of Baelor, eventually the Eye of Baelor could kill him. But also, he can just like will, if FNU's directly fighting him and he's free to act, he could just like will the Eye of Baelor to not exist and it would just be gone. So it's like, theoretically, it could kill him, but
Uriel is the Discord mod who will ban you if you post an SFW content.
Yeah, I mean, he could just will FNU into non-existence if he was free to act, and FNU
he's just like, she's annoying. All right,
yeah, he's not technically omnipotent, but when he's free to act, he's like nigh omnipotent. So
I really want like for us to have a moment like that with Uriel later on,
where someone fucks up and accidentally ends up in a situation where like he can act against them, and they're just like, it was at this moment he realized he fucked up.
Yeah, I feel like that's something that would happen in the big apocalyptic trilogy. Like,
yeah, I mean, the first, or I guess the second book, I forget which it is Hell's Bells. So Lucifer is going to make an appearance in the big apocalyptic trilogy. Cool. So,
and I'm scared for Empty Night. I'm so terrified. Like that title.
I'm so excited. Bring it on.
No, I'm excited, but at the same time, I'm scared. That's like how's that gonna end? Is that gonna be like a super dark, like first law ending, or is it gonna be like Harry Dresden walks off into the sunset?
I think that, so I said, remember, I think Harry's gonna die, but I think like the world is going to be, it will ultimately be a more hopeful ending, would be my prediction. I don't think it's going to be like an everything is terrible ending where like a bad guy ends up in charge or something. But
it's never really been the point of the series. There's always been like,
yeah, it's always, it's like, it's one of the very, very rare series where I basically never see anyone call it YA, and I basically never see anyone call it grimdark. It's like the one fantasy series we can agree is non-grimdark, non-YA adult fantasy.
Yeah, like if it were a movie, it'd be rated R, but not because like,
yeah, just like super because of content, like, not because of like.
I mean, it would be rated R because of nudity and language. Like,
well, I mean, literally in book 1, like scene 3 is Harry shows up and 2 people had their heart explode as they have sex. Like, yes, it would be rated R.
But it's not like it's not on such a level, because there's R and then there's like hard R.
It's probably not hard R.
Yeah. So I mean, like relate that to like books, so that's like not like full on grimdark. It's not like,
yeah, and it's just like message wise, it isn't grimdark.
Yeah,
it's, I've said the overlying like biggest theme of Dresden Files, well, I'll say there are 2 and neither of them are grimdark, is the theme of basically choice, that like, we have Harry, he's a winter knight, he's surrounded by bad guys, but he can still, no matter what happens, he can choose to not be a bad guy. No matter what goes on in his brain, he can choose what to do with it. And the other is especially highlighted in the Warrior, is kind of the impact and ripple effect that like small kindnesses can have. Those are not exactly grimdark themes.
No. I feel like even when the series has gotten in like pretty dark places, that there's always been like at least that sliver of hope that that things are going to be better and that things are going to be all right, and that Murphy may be dead now, but like Harry will move on somehow. And that,
it's always hopeful in the end. I mean, Harry literally says in Changes, hope is a force of nature. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. It's just, it's one of the rare series that like, I've never seen anyone argue that it's grimdark, and I've never seen anyone argue that it's YA. it's like it's the exception to my theory that you can take any series and someone thinks it's YA and someone thinks it's grimdark.
Yeah. It's like in a really interesting place because like you said, it's just in a really odd middle ground and or battleground, I guess. But it's always managed to be like a good, like there's always been a positive, optimistic outlook. Like I said, when even really terrible things are going on, but it doesn't feel like at the end of the day, like the good guys are winning because the good guys have to win.
Yeah, exactly.
The good guys are winning like because they have like hope on their side. They have like the optimism to say we can win.
Like,
not that we will win, but that we can win.
It's not like terrible things don't happen.
Yeah.
But there's always some level of like optimism or hope. It's just not a like nihilistic series.
Yeah. No, and I think that like that's a really like great way to write it because like it's not very cheap writing where you feel like no matter what happens the good guys are going to win because good guys have to win all the time. It's like good guys win because they have the they have the capacity to win and they have the hope that they can win even if they don't think that they will.
And it's actually one of the really impressive things I think the series does 17 books in is that not all the endings to all the books don't all feel the same. Like they're not all the same feel. They tend to err on the side of bittersweet.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not like, I feel like, in a 17 book series all following the same guy, it would be very easy to really fall into a formula for the ending. And it doesn't feel like it does.
The first few books kind of, but
a little bit, yeah.
But not.
But I mean, even Grave Peril rocks the boat on that quite a bit.
And then Summer Night even more so. And then it kind of like,
I mean, Grave Peril ending is arguably rocks the boat more because you have like, Harry asking Susan to marry him, and then Susan is like, "No, I'm a vampire. I would kill you by accident." And
yeah,
that's rough, buddy.
I mean, there's the Changes ending where he's like dying and then dying, and like the Cold Days ending where he's like, just walking around Devon Reach or whatever, and he like just looks up and there's like a dark storm coming in, like that's kind of like ominous, but at the same time, it's not exactly negative.
Yeah, or I mean, Ghost Story might be like one of the most unique endings where it's on one hand, he's alive. Oh no, he's the Winter Knight. And then you have Uriel or Mr. Sunshine lies. Mab cannot change who you are. Also, totally unrelated. Randomly love that Uriel, when Harry calls him Yuri, that's not acceptable because I'm pretty sure the eel, like Uriel means like light of God. So the eel, he's erasing the of God part, which is pretty important. But Mr. Sunshine is pretty similar to Light of God, so it's fine. Yeah. Anyways, random detail. But the ending of Ghost Story is great. I was going to say also the ending of Grave Peril has this is an example of like the kind of feel of Dresden where the ending of Grave Peril is largely like pretty depressing. Like Susan's a vampire now. Harry started a war. Everyone is mad at him. And then you kind of have the conversation at Michael at the end. And he says something along the lines of like, Harry, I'm not a philosopher, but like, what goes around comes around. And sometimes you get what's coming around. And sometimes you are what's coming around. And it's like, yeah, that's what Harry is. Harry is what's coming around. Especially
9 books later.
Yes.
I mean, the red court gets theirs, that's for sure.
Yeah. Yes, they do. Harry takes off the kid gloves.
Yeah. No. I feel like somehow we've managed to not talk about Maggie.
Oh, yeah.
Which is crazy because like we both love Maggie. She's great.
Yeah, Maggie's wonderful. When Maggie in Skin Game says the conversation, I think it's chapter 31 or 32, where it's like, "Are you mad at me?" And Harry's like,
I was like, nobody's mad at you, Maggie. We love you.
And Harry's like, "Oh, there's some things the Winter Night Mantle can't do anything about." That's one of my favorite chapters in Dresden. Do you want to be my dad? Oh, that
I was like,
so good.
And it wasn't like, are you really my dad? It's like, do you want to be my dad? And I was like, wow, okay. that
Yeah.
that hurts. But especially in Zoo Day.
Oh, I love Zude.
Zoo Day is so great. I don't care what anybody says. That's like one of the best
No,
Dresden.
everyone likes Zude. Zude
Yeah.
is
I mean,
probably
like,
universally loved. Anyone who's
even
watching this, if you don't like Zude, please comment below. What's wrong with you? Like, do you hate happiness?
yeah, like tell us if you need therapy because you don't like sweet innocent dogs.
I
And
remember Chief Hand Grenade was reading Zude and he got to the Maggie point of view and he's like, this is the most wholesome point of view of all time. And I was like, are you sure?
yeah.
And then one point of view later, he's like, Maggie is the second most wholesome POV of all time. How's that for a start? My name is Mouse and I'm a good dog. Everyone says so.
I love how he ended it. And how Harry was just like, get away. And then like Mouse is like, oh, that means, that means good boy. And I was like, I love you, Mouse. You're great.
Mouse was like to Maggie in his head, he's like, I tried to say I love you and random noises came out. I sighed. She knew. And I'm like, oh, Mouse, you're so precious.
Like I could spend so long talking about how sweet they are.
Yeah.
They're
wonderful.
great.
And
Maggie,
Maggie needs the therapy dog. Like, it's not like it's a lie because, she kind of got kidnapped by Red Court vampires.
Yeah.
I kind of like, I always find like the kind of Harry not in his worst weekend of the year where he's kind of like not out of his depth. I always find it kind of amusing in the short stories just because like it's so different. So it's like when the kid is like, well, it actually turns out it was manipulated by the other dog, but the kid is like summoning a demon. He's like, no, you have to run. You're screwed. And Harry's like, I got this.
Or like
or jury duty.
Yeah.
I was gonna say jury duty as well.
Yeah, jury duty is funny. But like the Bigfoot short stories where he's just like where he's just helping out.
The dude who's draining the life energy to try and get hair. That's how's that for a motivation, folks?
I mean, that's like god tier characterization right there.
Yeah, exactly. Who else is
Robin Hobb can fuck off because that's like the best.
Yeah, Robin Hobb never come up with anything like that. I could see Erickson writing that. I could absolutely.
I'm sure he could like spin it to be like really philosophical, and it would somehow work.
Yeah, the hair is a metaphor for compassion or something. I don't know. I like making fun of that, like where everything is metaphor for compassion.
He needs hair because hair is his happiness, and if he's not happy, he can't make other people happy.
I don't know. Whatever. That is
like crazy.
That is a wild short story. I don't know what Jim was thinking when he wrote that, but it's a thing.
But with like Zoo Day and just Maggie and Mouse in general, I think that kind of gives something Dresden to fight for. And I really, really like that because Dresden has always been like a very positive person. And, even like in darker moments, like he finds something good to, except for like maybe when Murphy died, he's always found like a good motivation to keep going and to keep fighting. And I think that Maggie really gives him something to fight for, and that's like one of the best things about her like relationship with him is how like he loves her, but also she's like part of his reason to keep fighting.
Yeah, and he needs something there because he's not exactly associating with the best of people, especially post Battleground. I mean, if you really look at how his allies have changed, he used to go in a fight with Murphy and Michael. He now looks like he's teaming up with people like Marcone and Lara. So he kind of needs something to.
And like they're fun characters, but they're also shitty people. Like,
yeah, and I mean it's really interesting how like the evolution of side characters have gone because we've really, especially post changes, we were kind of slowly starting to trade out our previous side characters for people who are like worse people. Mm-hmm. And it's probably going to happen more now that he isn't in the White Council. Those fuckers. That was such a great scene where Michael goes, "Those fuckers."
I just love Michael when he cusses. It's so great.
You mean one scene? He's cussed once. I mean, love Michael in general, but yeah, I totally agree with you on Maggie, especially because like his normal motivation still applies. Like he's still going to be the person um, who believes that magic is a force for good and should be used as a force of good and should be used to help others and shouldn't be used frivolously, which is why in the early books, he never just like when the SI people say he's a scam, he never goes flickambicus or ventas servitas because it's part of who he is that he doesn't think magic should be used frivolously. That's like almost his core belief. That's why he can use faith magic, right?
He's not a magician, he's a wizard.
Exactly, yeah. But also like he believes in magic in a way like somehow I've forgotten her name, but it's because there's two people with similar names. It's not my fault. It's not Hannah. It's Anna Valmont from Skin Game is also a wizard. If you were to give Anna Valmont a pentacle necklace and be like, use this as faith magic against the Black Court, she couldn't do it because she doesn't believe in magic. Like the pentacle is a symbol that magic is a force of balance and creation and not a force of good. She just kind of is like, magic is a source of power for her. Mm-hmm. And it's one of like the driving aspects behind Harry's character. And I also think this is off topic, but Alan read Stormfront, right? And Alan was kind of like, and Dresden is one of those series. Alan is going to really like Dresden. Like this is something that's going to happen. And he's going to very much like the character and the series. And he really likes characters who kind of really stand for something. And it's not as clear in Stormfront because the things Harry is willing to stand for in all cases are not the normal things because, how many people in real life do you know whose fundamental belief is that magic is a force for good, right? Like you send them to the insane asylum.
Right. But even if you take the whole magic thing away, Harry's just a good person who wants to fight for good. He wants to do the right thing. Yeah. He wants to do the best that he can. And I feel like that's a very attractive quality in a character that it's easy to be like, oh, well, he's just fighting for good for no reason because, good, hero stuff. But I don't know. I feel like it's a really interesting thing to fight for good because if you don't, terrible things are going to happen. The people who fight for evil are going to be stronger than you and they're going to turn the world into whatever they want. And there will not be any good anymore.
It's also if you removed Harry's power, I don't know if he would feel he had as much of a responsibility. Mm-hmm. But he's he literally quotes the Bible at Michael, which he has a thing to do, where Michael is like, you're only human. And he's like, to whom much is given, much is required. And Michael is like, for someone who claims you're theological Switzerland, you really quote scripture at people a lot. Nicodemus says the same thing to him. Anyways, and I'm sure he still would be a good person, but if he wasn't a wizard, I think he would feel way less responsibility to try and do what he does. And also what I like about it, even though he always fights for good, he has impulses to do things that are not good. He's not someone who can just do what is easy and natural to do and end up being good. He's not an all good character, someone Samwise Gamgee has never been tempted to seize power and bend the world to his will, right? Harry has that temptation. He just chooses not to do it, which is what one thing I like about him.
Yeah, and I feel like a lot of people, I don't think that anyone's exempt from having really dark temptations sometimes. So I think that it's really a testament to who you can be, what a good person can be if Harry is resisting these urges and ultimately conquers those urges and temptations and fights for good because it's the right thing to do.
Yeah, a good person in reality isn't someone who doesn't have bad thoughts. I don't know if that exists. The good people are people who have bad thoughts and then don't act on them. That's the difference between us and the psychos. I'm stealing that from Bill Burr, who it's we have the dark thoughts, we just don't act on it. Which, and Harry doesn't, but he has the dark thoughts. Like he has the, like, you know, have you ever had the thing where it's like a thought comes in your brain and you're like, no, brain, you can't think that.
You're like,
Stop.
why would I think that? That's terrible.
Stop. And
it's like especially dangerous if you have like the magic and the capabilities that Harry does. I mean, he's the Winter Knight, for God's sake. Like, there's so much that he can do. There's so much he could do before that, you know? So I feel like he could be a really dangerous person. And,
oh yeah, he'd be terrifying to go against. I mean, that's
and
one
kind
thing.
of like how Ramirez treated him. Like, I think it was in Peace Talks where he was like just kind of watching Harry, like making sure he didn't like do anything wrong.
Yeah, like to the council, Harry's the
know.
next best thing to Darth Vader. Like,
yeah,
terrifying. That's a really great thing in White Knight, where it's like you really kind of see like how for the people who the have-nots of the magical world, like Harry is really terrifying, especially because like from the council's point of view, if he thinks that he's in the moral right, he will never stop.
Yeah,
ever, even if he's wrong, which would be pretty terrifying.
You know, there are times where like I'm on the White Council side because like I can see how dangerous Harry could be, but at the same time, a lot of times it feels kind of like overblown a little bit because it's like he's shown you time and time again that like he's fighting for you and with you.
Well, it's easy for us to say we're in his head.
Yeah, that's true. And yet, like, it still surprises me sometimes when they're like, Harry, we don't trust you, you know. But like, I guess I get it, you know. He is extremely powerful, but
I remember someone made this, it was a fan made, and it's like what he thought the White Council's like file on Harry would look like. And it's like just with the information they have, and you read it and you're like, oh.
Yeah, I guess like when you kind of like make a laundry list of all the things that he's done, like without context, you know, like he's the warden of Demon Reach, you know, like you don't talk about like how he got there, like that's just on a list. You're like,
yeah, he started
really?
a war with the Red Court just because like
eliminated the entire Red Court.
Yeah, and then he finished it too. He started and finished a war
by himself.
Yeah,
Winter Knight.
Well, not by himself completely.
Not by himself.
But
he
like, helped.
You know,
but he was the guy who started it, and he was the guy who ended it.
Yeah, I mean, Winter Knight, like imprisoned Ethnu, like, you know, just
also. It's not like, you know, if he was like super put together and competent, it might be less frightening, but it's like, it's not even like it looks like he knows what he's doing. He's doing these things by accident.
What? Yeah. And that's the funny thing. It's like,
it's like I remember in Turncoat when Rashid points out all the reasons why Harry looks suspicious. And Harry's like, do you really think like I'm the genius mastermind here? And Rash was like, you know, you in that tree in Summer Night.
Yeah. It's like Joker in Dark Knight, where he's like, do I really look like a guy with a plan? Like,
well, except Joker's bullshitting.
Yeah, he is.
Like, Harry actually doesn't. Well, he's starting to become more of the guy with a plan. He's kind of like most like when you think of wizards in fantasy, you think of the wise wizard. He's kind of, we're going back to the burned hand teaches best. He's what the wise wizard starts as, and then the burned hand is slowly teaching him, is slowly trying to slowly transform him into the wise wizard who plans ahead.
I think Harry's like resiliency and like evolution over the course of the series is really amazing because it feels like very incremental. Even when big things are happening, it doesn't feel like his character is taking like he starts here and then the next book he's here, but like he kind of goes up like from there. And I think that's like really impressive writing where like Harry, if you read Stormfront and then you read Battleground or vice versa.
Yeah, I've done that. Well, not Battleground, but
so like you can tell that he's two very different characters, but when you're actually like reading the series, at least for me, it didn't feel like massive change. It felt like
it's very little gradual and subtle. Which is kind of like Jim Butcher, I think, is very, very good at doing time skips. He does the same thing in Alara. All the Alara books have at least a year between them. And I'm not sure if I can think of someone who's better at time skips than Jim Butcher, where Like when you have a year between Jim Butcher books, it feels like a year has happened, and not just for Harry. Like that's something I think Jim does well. When we see someone who we haven't seen for like 4 years, they've had 4 years worth of stuff happen to them.
Yeah. And I think that's kind of like why the short stories work so well, is because they can fit in between books so well.
I mean, you have plenty of time. We only follow like a couple days of every year.
Yeah.
12 months is going to be interesting because 12 months is going to take place over 12 months. Shockingly, who saw that coming?
That's going to be the next one, right?
Yeah, it's going to be the next book.
And then Mirror Mirrors after that, right?
Mirror, yes. And 12 months is going to be basically Harry has been kind of burying trauma for quite a while. Where, you know, there are instances in these books where Harry like skips over and doesn't tell us, like when he got captured by the vampires in Grave Peril. 12 months apparently is a lot about Harry finally like confronting his own trauma, which is probably going to cause me a lot of pain.
I feel like that's going to be like a controversial Dresden book. I think people are going to either really like it or really not.
Yeah, there's also going to be 12 dates with Lara, which will be interesting.
It's going to be kind of like I feel like it's going to be a ghost story situation where you have like changes and then you have ghost story. It's going to be like Battleground then 12 months. I'm kind of interested to see. I think that's going to be a really good Dresden book, personally.
Yeah, I'm really excited for it. I'm excited for every Dresden book though. But
yeah, no, I mean for sure.
The only ones I've waited for. I haven't actually waited for that many. It's just I caught up, and then instantly as I caught up, there was like a 6-year gap.
So like, when did you start reading the series?
I caught up basically as Skin Game came out.
Wasn't that like 6 years ago?
Yeah, it would have been like 2014, I think, 13. I'm Googling it.
That's a really long time to like invest yourself in the series. That's gotta
2014.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you caught up like 7 years ago.
I did, hence why I've reread it a lot of times.
Yeah. Yeah, I was gonna say if I had that much time, I probably would have reread it that many times.
I remember I got a good deal on the Cold Days hardcover because the random I was on like a little trip and it was a small little bookstore and the Skin Game hardcovers were about to come in, so they were like selling their Ghost Story and Cold Days hardcovers for really cheap. So
yeah, I was able to find hardcovers of like changes through Skin Game like pretty cheap, but for like $40 for all of them. But
that's good, yeah.
But like I really want the hardcovers of the rest of the series. It's just like ungodly expensive. So
yeah, I've kind of settled on what I've got. I guess I technically have a similar thing as you, but just off by one, where it's all mass market paperback up to Changes, and then it's thematic because it changes to hardcover. So there we go.
Yeah. I mean, I've continued getting the mass markets, and I'm gonna get the mass market of Battleground when it comes out, but that's mostly for completion purposes rather than like actually reading.
I'm not gonna get any more mass markets. I'm gonna just go hardcovers from here on out. I have some of the books twice. I have Skin Game in mass market and hardcover. Actually, I have it on ebook too. I have Skin Game 3 times.
Yeah, I have
a problem.
I've got doubles of Changes through Peace Talks, but you know, reading the series in a hardcover is so weird. Like after reading it in paperback for like,
yeah, it's a little bit weird.
And like I kind of it doesn't like feel the same, but at the same it feels like I'm getting less done, you know. But like I'm getting less read because there's like less pages.
Yeah, bigger
but at
pages.
the same time they're just bigger pages. But like Cold Days being the longest Dresden book but also being one of the best is really impressive.
Yeah, I mean, Cold Days also a lot of content in Cold Days. Cold Days is it's not like no one has ever I mean, I don't think I've ever seen someone accuse a Dresden book of being bloated.
No.
They're pretty obviously not bloated.
Yeah. Out of all the issues I've ever had with the Dresden book, pacing is not really one of them.
Yeah, they're paced pretty damn well. I mean, they're pretty fat. They're short books, so they're able to be like pedal to the metal. It's not like you can't do pedal to the metal for a 1,200 page Malazan book for the entire thing.
No.
It wouldn't work. You need kind of room to breathe. Same thing with like, Wheel of Time or Stormlight or any really long book, but Dresden books are short. So paddle to the metal.
Yeah, that kind of makes me like, I think we've already talked about this, but it kind of makes me wonder if like how big Bat is going to be.
They're going to be about double length, apparently. So they're going to go from like right now, Dresden books vary from about 100,000 to 130,000 words. So they'll vary from like 200,000 to 260,000, which makes them like Mistborn Era 1 length, a little bit longer.
Gotcha. I feel like I'm really going to enjoy like more Dresden page time, not just because I like the series, but just because I feel like that can really add a lot of room for things to happen that
I agree.
That couldn't happen in a shorter Dresden book.
Also, I like that for his big apocalyptic trilogy. It's not going to be like one type of apocalypse. He's going to be like, why have one apocalypse when you can? I don't know if it's going to be three. I mean, there's a lot of potential apocalypses, right? Like the obvious ones are Outsiders, a bit literal biblical apocalypse, and Demon Reach. But
I mean, if he does all three, I will be thoroughly impressed.
Yeah, I could see him doing all three. Just being like, oh, actually, Harry, you think you're getting one?
No. I think I would be more impressed by one than three. I meant by three than one.
Because I think it's going to be three. I think that's kind of, people are saying like there's cycles in the Dresden Files, and usually there's like 1,000-year cycle where it tends to change who's guarding the outer gates. Like Mab hasn't been doing it forever. Winter's been doing that for around 1,000 years. There's like the Starborn cycle. There's probably other ones, and this is the first time they're all aligning to happen in a short period of time to cause maximum pain and suffering to one Harry Blackstone Copperfield Dresden. That's how Dresden works. Jim has the universe collide to screw over Harry.
Yeah, just so he can suffer.
Yes, but then he also gets lucky sometimes as well.
Was there anything else you wanted to talk about, like before?
Who's your favorite non-Harry Dresden character? I'm going to make you pick.
I've got like 2 or 3. Murphy, Mab, and Michael.
Yeah, I can't argue with any of those.
I mean, as much as I love Marcone, like it's hard to give that to him.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of good options.
Marcone's like my favorite side character, probably.
Marcone probably has more page time than Mab, so I think Mab is your favorite side character.
Maybe.
Marcone has a lot more page time than Mab.
Yeah, I think that maybe it's hard to say because like they both have they're both very interesting and they've both had like really huge moments throughout the series, so it's really hard to like choose between them. I guess it just.
How about Harry admitting at the end of Battleground that Marcone was right by the way he does things? That he did not like admitting that.
No, and I love their relationship. It's so funny because they're both like just glaring at each other, but they're like, all right, Dresden, let's like do this.
Extremely grudging respect.
Yeah.
Like they're not only like, they're like, all right, fine. Like I respect what you're going, but like, you suck at our
like, we're not so different, you and I. Like, but Dresden's like, what are you talking about? We're so different. I'm nothing like you. But like at the end, he's like, but then at the end, he's like, yeah, you're right, Marcone. Like, anyway, and he's like, damn right I am. Like,
all right. We should probably restrict this to the last topic because we're gonna go for a long time. But when do you think Marcone took up the coin? Because he got it after Small Favor, and he didn't have it he hadn't taken it up during Even Hand.
And Even Hand was after Small Favor, right?
I forgot if it's after Small Favor. I think it's after Turncoat as well.
Yeah, no, yeah, it was after Turncoat. I remember. Yeah.
Which is actually I'll just tell you my thing. I think he took it up around Changes and after Even Hand for a couple of reasons.
I was gonna
One,
say like
he mirrors Harry.
around or after changes.
Yeah, because one, his arc usually mirrors Harry's arc. Harry took up the Winter Mantle. He probably took up that. I wonder if in the outline, I wonder if Harry had gone the Lashiel route. Is there any future where Marcone became the Winter Knight? That'd be cool. I don't think he would ever take it up though.
No.
Whatever. And the other reason is there's a conversation in Changes where Harry goes to Marcone for information, and Harry's like, "Or I throw down right now and like knock you out that window." And Marcone says, "Is that how you think it would go?" And he seems very confident for a non-magical man. So now in hindsight, I'm like, you with the coin, didn't you, you bastard? Which is why he thought he would have a good chance against Harry in a fight.
I just hope they never have to fight. I don't want to like have to choose between them.
Oh, also random, Even Hand, which is the Marcone short story, reads very differently when you know that Justine is infected. Justine starts the war between the Formore and Marcone. Like, obviously, when you know what's going on. Like, she does it deliberately.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's like, and you never suspected it the first time, but it's
Justine
like,
always gets the short end of the stick. Like, you know, I feel bad for her. Like, you know.
there's an inappropriate joke in there somewhere about her getting the short end of the stick that I'm not going to try and come up with. Anyways, I think I'm not out of topics, but I'm about to accept the fact that that's about all the topics. Is there anything else you want to talk about?
No, I think that I pretty much covered what I wanted to talk about, and probably more than that too, honestly.
Anyways,
yeah.
The black staff is Mother Winter's walking stick. Just by the way, totally. It's not confirmed, but that's the theory that like is universally accepted.
I mean, it would be really, really cool.
It's just like, it's pretty obvious at this point. This is the chain of events. We see the black staff. It looks like a death-related walking stick. 2 books later, Harry summons Mother Winter using all death-related stuff. She's lost her walking stick. In Battleground, Ethnu confirms that the walking stick is like a thing that belongs to someone who's like super powerful, who like is almost has like Ethnu's respect. So the mothers were some of the most powerful beings in the universe. Anyways, that's how what I'm betting it on. The black staff is Mother Winter's walking stick. Now you know.
Yeah.
It's almost a twist for it not to be at this point.
Yeah.
Anyway, everyone, you should all go subscribe to Chayce's channel to give respect for the fact that he put way more background, like effort into his background, where you can see great things where he has like wonderful reviews for Gardens of the Moon and Assassin's Apprentice, and then he just reads Powder Maid instead, but that's okay. We forgive him. He'll probably have more reviews for things like Dead House Gates and more Robin Hobb, big Senlin guy, right?
Yeah, I'm reading The Blade itself right now. I should be done tomorrow. I'm reading Trader's Blade right now, which obviously you don't like very much. But I'm also I'm almost halfway through Royal Assassin at the moment. So more Hobb reviews and Abercrombie. So that's kind of where I'm at right now.
Good stuff. I don't have a send-off, so I'm going to say bye, everyone. Do you have a send-off that you do at the end of your videos?
No, I'm just like, thanks for watching. You know, it's kind of like, if you're still here. Like,
yeah, I'm sure
thanks.
One person is. Anyways, bye, everyone.
Like Pranav is still here.
Bye, Pranav. Bye, Pranav. Not everyone.
If
bye,
you're
Pranav.
still here.
You robot.